Discussion. You are. We're good to go. We're good to go. All right, I will call this meeting to order here of the September 2024 Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. My name is Keith Norris. I am the chair of SPRAB. We will start off with a roll call. Dylan McDowell, our vice chair, is absent. Alan Alexander. Here. Mauricio Flores. Here. Zachary Hammerly is not here. Al Holland.
I am here if you can hear me.
You can. Thank you.
Okay.
Joan Lloyd. Here. And Debbie Miller is also absent. So we have 3 members absent, but that does still give us a quorum. And so we will now move to the approval of minutes. And your meeting packet had a series of 3 months of minutes. Because I know last time, at least at the last meeting, we didn't have them, but apparently at the last 2 meetings, we did not have the minutes in the packet, and so we will approve all of those. Does anybody have any edits or notes on those sets of 3 minutes? From the May 2024, June 2024, and July 2024 meetings. We did not have a meeting in August. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion, we approve as presented.
Alan Alexander makes the motion.
Aye.
Second, anybody second that motion? Mauricio seconds that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes, minutes are approved. We'll move on to public comment, and we have 3 public commenters this afternoon. For folks that want to make general public comment, not on the agenda items. We'll limit those comments to 3 minutes. And Patty Tipton, we will start with you. You've got 3 minutes, Patty.
These things. First off, I want to give this to you both. I want this back, but these are pictures of the fence painting project. So if this you keep. For me, Patty. I came to this board 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I'm not good on time.
Yep.
My name is Patty Tipton. I'm a neighbor of Lansing Park, and I've been taking care of Lansing Park for over 30 years, doing all kinds of stuff, and Jennifer knows what kind of stuff I've been doing for that park. In the last few years, I've noticed that the fence at Lansing Park looked like a patchwork of different colors, because people were just painting over the graffiti, but not actually doing anything nice for the fence. So this last year, I found the money, to paint this fence. And I asked your permission, Jennifer, what I need to do to paint that fence, to make it look nice for the neighborhood. And you did give me that permission to do so, as long as I got permission from the owners of the fence. And I did get that permission, according to Nelson and to the neighbors, and they agreed. And so on August 17th at 7 a.m. I brought everything to the park. I got the rest of the funding, which was through CAPES and N2, which was supposed to pay for the donuts and coffee that morning, to give people energy and fuel to do the work. And at 8 a.m. people came in. I had 6 volunteers that showed up with their own paintbrushes, and they loved the color, and they were more than willing to do the work. And these people lived in the neighborhood at Lansing, and then by noon we had it completely done, and everything was packed up and we left. According to the pictures, if you look at them, you'll see that it turned out nice and the neighbors loved it. The owners, I mean, loved it. And I gave each owner 1 gallon of the blue paint to cover any graffiti that should come up later on. So they didn't have to use different colors on the fence again for a while. Anyway, we finished it. We got it done. You have my budget. You have the names of the people that worked on that fence and pictures. If there's any questions, I don't know what else to tell you, but they all had a good time. And from what I've heard from other people in the neighborhood and other, N2 had their meeting yesterday, and they were very pleased with everything. They said that they were glad they gave me the $100 to buy donuts and coffee. I have a meeting with Capes on Thursday, give them the final report. And you're the one of 4 that I've needed to make the report to. So I hope you like the pictures. And if you have driven by the park, you've seen the fence, and I hope you like the fence.
We appreciate
Thanks.
all your hard work on it, Patty. You did a great job. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the photos. But that looks great. Excellent color. Thank you very much, Patty. All right, next up, we have Jim Shepke.
Look right behind you. The report is yours. That's for you.
Go
Hello,
ahead, Jim.
everyone.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Shepke. I live in Ward 2. A few months ago, I came and talked to you about baseball, and that's turned out well. I'm very pleased, and I really appreciate your support, the SPRAP support for that. But today, I'm going to talk to you about libraries. And you may ask yourself, well, why is this guy coming to the SPRAP to talk about libraries? And I promise you I'll get to that eventually. But I have a handout that talks about a group that we formed called Fund Our Libraries. And we're some citizens that care about the Salem Public Library, and we're determined to get a funding measure on the ballot for the library next May. And if you read the very first paragraph of this handout, you'll see why we need that. We have the worst funded public library of any city, over 30,000 population in the whole state of Oregon. When I moved here 38 years ago, we had one of the best and maybe one of the best funded. Now we have the worst. And you'll see from this first paragraph, our funding is $33 per capita compared to, you can see how that compares to Beaverton, Eugene, Hillsborough, Corvallis. So we're trying to change this. We're trying to have at least as good a library as Hillsborough or Beaverton. We think our citizens deserve that. We don't want the West Salem Library to close after 67 years of being open. So we're trying to change that. So we're determined to get on the ballot next May so that on July 1st of next year, our library can be open 7 days a week. Our West Salem branch can be open 5 or 6 days a week like it used to be years ago. So why am I talking to you? Well, we could either have a library levy on next May, or another idea that's been pitched to the Revenue Task Force is what's called a livability levy. And that would combine funding, not just for the library, but for parks and for Center 50 Plus, because all 3 city departments have been cut terribly, and all 3 are in danger of having even worse funding in the new fiscal year in 2025 if we don't do anything. So that's why I'm bringing this to you. I would love for you all to get on board with the livability levy. We got this idea from Corvallis. They have one. They have a livability levy. They passed it last November with a 66% yes vote. We think we can do something similar here that would fund the library, parks, and Center 50 Plus. Unfortunately, the library needs the most money. We're going for something like 75 cents per thousand, which would be $11 a month increase for the average homeowner on their property taxes. That would be $5 million for the library, $2 million for parks, $1 million for Center 50 Plus. And obviously those are just big round numbers, but in the ballpark. And that would be a 5-year levy. The city council's meeting on October 21st. They're gonna get some polling results about this. They're out polling right now, right today. I talked to a guy that just got polled. And they're asking about library, they're asking about parks, they're asking about Center 50 Plus, and they're asking about other priorities that people have. I would love it if at your next meeting, you talked about some written testimony to the city council on October 21st. It's a work session, so it won't be live testimony, saying that the SPRAB is in favor of the livability levy that would fund parks in addition to library and Center 50 Plus. The library, we're gonna be, we're gonna go all out for our share, what we need. We would love to have you join us, and I give you that invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. I let you go for because I let Patty go for too,
Okay.
so that's true. But appreciate it. I think that is an important topic, and I appreciate bringing it forward. As some of you know, I served on the revenue task force this year as well, and as Jim said, one of that task force recommendations was this kind of livability levy idea that city council is now grappling with and how they're going to fund. So I think that's an important discussion for us to have as we can help advise city council on some of those funding options and opportunities. Next up is EM.
Again, just being.
You're
again,
observer, all right,
Involved.
perfect, thank you, EM. Robin, online, did you want to make any public comments?
No, other than I apologize for not being there in person. Ken is doing a presentation related to a program that I'm very involved in. So
Perfect,
I'm
you're
just
with
here to
Ken.
listen.
Excellent.
Yes.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for the public comments. With that, we will move on to our presentations. And first up, we do have Ken Beerley to present to us on a floodplain species assessment in the Salem area. Ken is coming from the Glen Gibson Watershed Council, which he's involved with, along with a number of other things. I will
Thank you very much. This, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a floodplain species assessment, what it is, what it affects, how it interacts with the city of Salem. This is a cooperative effort that's partially funded by the city of Salem, with Watershed Protection Grant, and partially funded by the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. We applied for the funds in cooperation with the city of Salem. And so, the next slide. There are quite a few floodplains within the urban growth boundary of the city of Salem. You can see that they're all in blue here. I'm going to talk a little bit about what are floodplains, how are they regulated, how does the city manage floodplains, then how does that interact with the Endangered Species Act, which is what a floodplain species assessment is, and then kind of what we found and what will be presented to the city. This is basically an information development project at this point. A floodplain species assessment is an informational tool for the city and for the citizens that live within the city. Next slide. Floodplains are a very complex portion of the river. The floodplain is a part of the river. It's the part of the river that only gets water on it on an occasion. And you heard terms like 100-year flood. Well, that's a flood that occurs 1% of the time, anytime. And you could have 100-year floods back to back. They don't occur spread out over time. They occur when there's water there. And it's the interaction between flowing water, the geology, the landscape, and then whatever humans have done to it, historical alteration, and then the interaction with the biology. This vegetation has a significant effect on the shape and conditions of floodplains. So the science of floodplains is complex. It relates to both hydrology, geology, and biology. And the important thing to know is that while these are regulated because a lot of floodplain areas are private land, they are subject to alteration by natural forces. And they are also incredibly biologically rich and important. Next slide. So in the past and currently, floodplains have been regulated under the National Flood Insurance Program, where they identify the probability of flooding. So there's a 1% probability, which is the 100-year floodplain, or the 0.2% flood probability, which is the 500-year floodplain. And these are special flood hazard areas that have been identified that are basically the spatial area that could be affected by given storm conditions. And those are mapped, and they're mapped in dominantly mapped in urban areas. There are not that many floodplains that have been mapped outside of urban areas, but there are a few. So the regulations affect whether you're in the floodway, which is the portion of the stream that is actively flowing, or the flood fringe or risk areas. And the whole area is called the special flood hazard area. Next slide. The city of Salem has been very active in developing a floodplain management plan. It's on the web. There's a website. It has a mapping tool. You can find your individual property and the relationship between your property and floodplains on the city of Salem's website. The City of Salem Floodplain Management Plan was updated in October of 2023, so it's fairly recent. It's active. It's one of the more effective floodplain management programs in this state. Next slide. So how does that interact with the Endangered Species Act? The Endangered Species Act is a federal act. It designs or identifies species that are in danger of extinction throughout all or a significant portion of their range. And they're classified as either endangered or threatened. And those are identified by either U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that looks at plants and animals that are within the geographic area, the National Marine Fisheries Service of National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration identifies fish species that travel from one to the ocean and back. So salmon and steelhead are listed by NOAA Fisheries, plants, birds, amphibians, etc., are designated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And the species are designated and identified based on scientific findings of their status, their population status. Next slide. They're also here's some of the species that can be found here in Salem. The upper Willamette steelhead, Willamette chinook, use the Willamette River. They also use Mill Creek. So both species are active within these waterways that flow through Salem. Northwest pond turtle is being proposed to be listed as threatened. Streaked-horned lark, it's a prairie bird that used to be very common, Willamette daisy. So these are actual species that have been identified within the Salem urban growth boundary. Streaked-horned lark have been found at the airport. They haven't been found recently, but in the past they've been found at that location. Next slide. So when an endangered species is identified, one of the elements of the Endangered Species Act is to identify critical habitat. And one of the unique things about particularly the salmon and steelhead, they identify critical habitat as that area which is within the 2-year floodplain. And if you look at this crosshatched area of the Willamette, that's on the 2-year floodplain for the Willamette. That covers a lot of both public and private land. a lot of that, Meadow Brown Island, you can see, Wallace Marine Park, you can see, these are areas that are within the critical habitat of these listed species. We don't have mapping for the 2-year floodplain for Mill Creek or for the west fork of the Little Pudding River, which both have steelhead and Chinook in them. But it's important to understand that it's not just the thread of the river. This is just the 2-year floodplain. If you look at the flood map, it actually goes quite beyond that for the flood hazard area. So the critical habitat is something to be really aware of, and it's something that I don't think too many people are aware that how this applies to development. And as you see further north in the Kaiser area, there's a lot of area that probably has houses on it that's in the 2-year floodplain. Next slide. So the whole purpose of a floodplain species assessment is to follow the guidance that's been prepared by National Flood Insurance Program for the community rating system. And it's an informational piece that is specific to the city of Salem. And there's a draft that we've prepared and submitted to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, FEMA to review. We've gotten the review comments. Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife reviewed it, and then we've gotten all those comments. So we will have a final document here shortly. It'll be available through the city, perhaps put on their website. We've also done presentations to most of the neighborhood associations, handing out brochures like this that talk about floodplains and how floodplains are regulated and what species might be there. So it's really an information piece that we're preparing in cooperation with the city. And what this does is it helps provide credit for the community rating system that gives points for and sets rates for flood insurance. So by having this, it has the potential of reducing flood insurance rates for people in the city of Salem. If we go beyond the floodplain species assessment and develop what's called the Natural Floodplain Functions Plan, that would provide further protection for the areas that could be affected here, that could further reduce floodplain insurance rates by a substantial amount. Next slide. So this has been a cooperative effort with Robin, with the city of Salem. Robin Dahlke is responsible for the implementation of the floodplain program. And the next slide. When you say flooding is a bad thing? Anyway, I'm open to any questions. I hope this helps. One of the reasons that it's important to be aware of, there are some the northern end of Wallace Marine Park is a natural park. That's all in the floodplain. That is critical for these areas, and there is a possibility of adding to these so that it would reduce private development impacts on floodplains and take that out of contention so that there would be better opportunities for development in other places other than the floodplain. Robin, correct me for everything I've said wrong.
No corrections. I think that's great, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. Any questions for Ken about this work and what he and the city have been working on?
And we will probably be presenting this to city council, to the planning commission, right?
Yeah, planning commission date in November.
Okay.
Excellent. Al, you had a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
You can.
Okay, my question is just briefly about structures that are already existing in the floodplain. You mentioned houses in Kaiser. Are there any restriction plans? What issues do those people or the structures have? And what's their future? Are they gonna stay there?
To my knowledge, there would be no change to their current condition. This is all trying to inform decisions on future development rather than punitive measures on the existing development. We've made many mistakes in the past. What we're trying to do is learn from those and have a better future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ken. Next up. Slow walking a little bit, because Joan walked out. She told me she'd be right back. But I know we need her for potential motions on this next item. So next up, we will have Rob talk to us about baseball infield servicing at Gear Park. And a design process that is undergone and some questions around the particular type of turf that might be used as part of that project.
And while we wait for our member to return, there are some samples up there of two turf systems. The darker box is a product we're considering for this project we'll be talking about. And the lighter colored box is a more traditional product, similar or identical to the product being used in the city of Kaiser at their new installation at Kaiser Rapids Park. So the lighter box is a more general product that's used for multi-use fields, and the darker box is a specific for baseball product that mimics the grass in terms of the ball roll. Just can you go grab his left drive? Right next to the camera.
Rob, do you wanna hit pause?
I don't know if I can do that.
We just mute and.
Yeah.
I've lost the sound.
Actually,
Al, we're gonna mute intentionally just because member Lloyd is outside the room and we're just gonna wait till she returns.
We're waiting for quorum to come back out.
Okay, thank you. Have comparative costs been mentioned?
Okay, Al, looks like we're gonna resume here in a moment.
Slide on, right? All right, we'll call it back to order now, that our quorum has returned. And we'll turn it over to Rob for presentations.
Great. Good afternoon. So as part of the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond and the park upgrades that we are now working on, we are exploring the option of increasing the utilization of the existing ball fields at Gear Park by installing artificial turf field within the infields of the baseball fields. So not the entire field, just the infields. The perceived benefits there are two. One is that we will gain more usability in the shoulder seasons. So earlier in the spring and later in the fall, we can use these baseball fields. The other advantage is that by using artificial turf in the infields, we can, and we're pursuing this, we can turn these into multi-use fields. They can accommodate softball through removable pitcher mounds. So pitcher mounds would then be removed when you play for softball, and there'll be different pegs for different base limits. So it'd be pretty relatively easy to convert a field to softball use. So depending on the reservation holder's needs. So this discussion today aims for input on key considerations related to this potential move we're making with this project. Initially, the project was envisioned just to be a restoration of the fields as grass and clay. So we kind of came up with this after the bond was passed and are seeing if it's not a better solution for us to maximize use of the fields. Before I go any further, I'm gonna share my screen and talk a little bit about the scope of the project. So just so the full scope of what we're up to here. All right, the project includes 4 essential elements to it. The first one is actually not funded by the bond, but we are designing it with this project and it will be publicly bid separately and uses system development charges. That is a connection from the state hospital sidewalk to the park. So we are simply running a sidewalk along Park Avenue, which does not have a sidewalk. It's quite a hazard for people from Northeast neighborhood and other neighborhoods to the Northeast or Northwest, excuse me. We received a lot of feedback on this through the master plan update a few years ago. So it'll be an improved pedestrian crossing with rapid flashing beacons up on Park Avenue and then routing the sidewalk down into the park. And then the skate park project, which I'm not talking about necessarily today, it's developing this area of the park so that sidewalk will connect to the skate park project and connect people directly to the existing parks.
And if I may, Rob, those are all things that this board reviewed and approved as part of the master planning process a year or two ago.
Yes, yeah. And then the next element, I'm just gonna keep moving along. So yeah, here's that in more detail. So as I said, we'll be treating stormwater, we'll be restoring the lawn, we'll be replacing street trees. The street trees there were planted by the state and separately, as some context that and some of the members who are newer may not know this, we are in a complicated land use process to move property lines around with the state. It's a multi-year process. When it's over, we will own the park, they will own everything else. Right now, the park is mostly on property owned by the state and leased to the city. So we will no longer have a lease for the park at that point. The state is also giving us this section of Park Avenue, so the city would then control it. Our section would then stop right here and include everything to the south. They would retain control of Recovery Drive and Park Avenue moving through their parking lot, although there will be a public access easement, so people are allowed to drive and walk on that road. It'll just still be their property. So they planted street trees when they developed the park the street section a number of years ago. That they didn't have any establishment watering plans. Those trees have failed to thrive. That's how I'll put it. And so we will replace those street trees. The next element, which is definitely funded by the bond, is an off-leash dog area, otherwise known as a dog park. This is the concept we're exploring right now. It does include a large dog area that's fenced in, as well as a small dog area that's also fenced in. So it has a pre-treatment swale between the dog park and the detention pond that exists today. This is not required by code. It is a decision we are making with the design team to just have some sort of treatment off from the runoff from the dog park. There's going to be a perimeter gravel path for folks to walk around. It will probably terminate at some point and not be a true outer path because we do have this conflict with the fence here. So I lead someone to a path that's then fenced off. So we're refining our concept still. This is some comment there, but we will also have paved double gated entry and then paved walkways that go to a shelter with a bench. So if it's a rainy day, there's a place to sit outside of the rain and your dog can exercise. We are proposing some contouring of the landscape. There's a extra fill at the site today, and so we don't want to expend the cost to move that away. So we're going to sculpt landforms, create some interesting mounds the dogs can run up and down, plant trees, add benches, drinking fountain, dog waste stations. That's generally the idea there. We're also going to add a new reservable picnic shelter across from the dog park next to one of the baseball fields. And then that will have a stormwater treatment facility because it's a new impervious surface that we need to treat. And we'll also be adding some new paved path sections with this project as well, connecting to an existing bridge in the park today. This is the topic of today's discussion. Primarily, this is the baseball fields, and it's simply, as I said, we are turfing the infields only. We'll be doing some sprucing up of the outfields, so refreshing them is a better way to put it. And again, we will be treating the runoff from the artificial turf area as though it was a concrete surface. So we will be capturing it, and it will be going to a treatment swale. That is required by our code. We're not doing that because we think it's the right thing to do. We're doing that because we have to. Even though we may do that anyways. We made that decision. The last part here is we're doing a refresh of the soccer fields. We're going to have new under drain system and a new irrigation system and regrading. Right now, the ball field or the soccer fields feature crowns in the middle of them. So there's a crown that runs the length of the soccer field and here, and there's a divot between the two. The divot becomes a muddy mess in the winter. It also prevents us from having maximum flexibility in how we program this space. If it wasn't there, if it was a more flatter surface, we could have ultimate frisbee out there, for example. There are more things we could do with it.
So when you say improving it or changing the grading, you're gonna flatten it all and then put better drainage in underneath.
Yeah, the new grading will be a very flat surface. It will have a 1% slope that drains right this direction and then connects to an existing outfall into the detention basin.
Gotcha.
Okay. So for today, the key considerations are the use of, for the artificial turf product itself, the use of products that are free of PFAS. This PFAS or free and polyfluorinated substances are used in a lot of products. They're used in cosmetics, they're used in non-stick pans. They are also known as forever chemicals, and there's been a lot of discussion in media and in drinking water regulations recently about how bad they are for us. The idea here is that we want to be sensitive that if we're inviting people and especially young people to use the fields, as well as that we're going to have this impact on the watershed, that we're doing so in a way that we're thinking about the environmental impacts, also the human health impacts. So I don't truly trust that there is a product on the market today that is PFAS free. So what I'm asking you all to do is to advise us to use our, we're pretty savvy, use our best efforts to identify materials that have less of this chemical in it. So at least we can reduce the pollutants in the product. This comes at a higher cost. So like if you had a product that's marketed as low PFAS, I'm but confident it would be higher cost. We also want your consideration of the use of organic infill materials. Both of those samples I have here in the room today use, basically it is tires from vehicles that were pulverized into chrome rubber is what they call it. There's a variety of alternatives on the market. Some of them are organic based products. And the one example that is attractive to at least me is olive core, approximately olive pits, essentially. So it's very popular in Northern California, but this, instead of the chrome rubber, you would use olive core, and it adds an extra benefit. So not only does it, any kind of pollutants that we would be concerned about in the chrome rubber is taken out of the situation, it also has this added benefit of heat management. So the black chrome rubber, as you might imagine, gets really hot really quickly in the sun. These alternative organic mediums can have properties like the olive product that have absorbed less heat. So the play surface is cooler, and then this has to do with the comfortability and the health impacts for the users of the field. The other thing that's attractive to this one product, this olive pit as an example, is that it has no extra maintenance requirements. So it is simply that instead of using chrome rubber, we use it. There are other products on the market. I think the one is based on coconut fibers. It requires us to irrigate the field, and that is not something we would recommend in any situation. So we have a lot of considerations here, but we do think that there is probably significant advantage to having an organic infill in material over the chrome rubber. So the desired outcome, from my perspective, is that we seek your input today on whether to pursue these specifications and to identify any other features that are essential for the possible application of artificial turf at your park, even if it requires additional funding. And your feedback is critical to helping us make an informed decision that reflects the community's values and priorities, and we appreciate your consideration and look forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you, Rob. So are any questions or thoughts about kind of this overall project or the particular topics of consideration regarding the infield surfacing turf out online?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say, Rob, that you're right on track with all the thinking that you've expressed here. As far as I'm concerned, I like what you're doing, what the plans are, and the consideration, particularly regarding the crumb rubber versus the organic fill. I was only wondering if we might find some organic fill more locally with fine hazelnut fill. I don't know if that's an option. I don't know that it's produced and marketed, but it's just a thought I had. Everything else looks good to me. Thank you.
Any other questions in the room?
Just a couple, Rob. And of course, the most obvious. You say it may be more expensive. Do you have an estimated cost on what the synthetic infield would be?
Yeah, in a meeting with the rep for this product, this company, Field Turf, that the samples are from, the rep said that it would be between 25 cents and $1.50 a square foot more. So that's quite a range.
What's the total, so related question, like
Yeah.
what's the overall cost we're looking at anyway?
The light tan box, so your basic turf is $12 a square foot.
And the nicer one that we're gonna go with?
We actually don't have a price estimate on that yet.
Oh, cool.
And
Too expensive, you can't even ask. Awesome.
What about life cycle? Is there,
Yeah.
what's the life cycle on this synthetic turf?
That's a great question. So for an application where it's like a soccer field, for example, the warranties are typically 10 years. On an infield of a baseball field, because of the intensity of use, they're only gonna warranty the product for 4 years. Our expectation, though, is that we will have a useful life of 8 to 10 years. There may be situations where we have to replace the section just at home plate. And that we may have to do that twice in that 10-year period. But that's not a substantial cost compared to replacing it all.
So help me out. My experience has always been, it was Little League, and that was 100 years ago. How many square feet are we talking about?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I can definitely follow up with you.
Times 90 is.
I guess
I can tell you, we're it's approximately $700,000 for the base cost of $12 a square foot.
Oh, okay, well, I can back that out. The reason I'm trying to look forward, it's intriguing, it certainly makes for a good looking surface too. And keep in mind that I'm a strong believer in marketing our community to particularly the athletics, because that brings tourism dollars, which adds to our revenue in the city in various ways. But I don't see a whole lot of more money for parks in a bond in the near future, probably my lifetime. So we have to satisfy our citizens that they're going to get delivered the products they thought were coming out of the bond. And granted, there may be some advantages to making improvements, and I certainly think this could be one of them. But we gotta make sure we've got our bases covered, that we're not shorting some other project that was promised in the bond that our citizens would receive, particularly in parks. And with construction costs these days, I'm sure you folks, as you implement other projects, are facing some higher costs than probably were imagined when the bond was put together. That's just my concern.
Great.
So,
Yes.
but I think I'm intrigued with the product. Of course, and I don't, I have no idea. I know that I see them get replaced, and I don't know how often other places do it or why. And I know weather certainly has an impact on that. And sun, and we had plenty of that this past summer. So those are only my concerns. Like the idea if we can afford it.
Great. I just,
Well, I was gonna say, I think those are good thoughts, Alan, and I think, right, so the question before us is not about the specific project, but is about the additional, the guidance on kind of the additional, type of material to be used, which does come into the cost play there.
And I know just two likely scenarios to address those cost issues. One is that the city will likely attempt to do a similar bond in 10 years when the 10-year delivery period of this bond is up. And then we could then include the returfing in that bond. So that's an idea. It's not a guarantee by no means, but that's the concept. The other part of that is escaping me at the moment. It's any additional expense. So the bond, we have a project estimate that was used to develop the bond amount. If we go over that amount, we're not gonna steal from another park project that isn't delivered yet. We would more likely than go and allocate system development charges because we are adding capacity. We're adding the ability to use the fields for baseball fields. So we would make an argument, I don't know if we necessarily would 100% guarantee this would happen, but we make an argument that we could use system development charges from new development to augment the project's budget.
Rather than pulling from other projects
Yeah.
that are proposed in the bond.
Rather than for saying, we're only going to do 9 of the 10 playgrounds we said we were going to.
Well, I think that would be political suicide.
Right.
Playground the people were promised.
Totally agree. I think those are excellent points, Alan.
But, and I, you know, I just, and I guess the SEC would probably certainly qualify, but I would certainly encourage you to continue to do your research. And at some point in time, you have to make, a Fisher Cup bait decision on it. We can do this, or we may be stretching ourselves.
Rob, my question, about the infill, one, thinking about the replacement of it and the wear and tear on a baseball field versus soccer field is I'm thinking about the various spikes that are worn in baseball. And I don't know what our rules are in the city right now in terms of the spikes allowed on baseball fields, right? The metal spikes versus plastic spikes. I guess, are we considering those sort of potential policy changes or rule changes related to this that would help elongate, probably not be necessary because you don't need the metal cleats on turf, I suspect, and B, help elongate the life of the turf.
We have not started to consider those policy decisions, but we will certainly. Also, like having food and drink and we will be controlling access to these fields to the extent we can.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
The other question I had about kind of the infill, love the idea of not using the rubber. I have not played on turf fields very much, but one of my thoughts is olive cores are hard and rubber is not. And so in terms of safety concerns and falls and dives and slides on a baseball field, is there a consideration of that that's been shown in these products?
Yes, I'm gonna share the screen here. This is again, this company Field Turf. Not to say that we would necessarily, we've selected them, but so this is the basic rubber. They have lots of options here and cork is one of them. It's just real quick here, it has an added maintenance cost, so we'd have to investigate that.
I just meant but so like with the olive core.
Yeah.
Is there like, what's the safety aspect? Is there a safety concern in terms of impact of players on the field, more likely to get injured from falls?
Because rubber gives.
Because rubber
Yeah.
gives and olive core doesn't.
No, so in the world of artificial turf, that's called the G-Max rating.
Cool.
And I do believe it has the same G-Max rating as the rubber. That's my understanding.
Perfect. Okay.
It has the added of the heat reduction. So it's like an added benefit from a health standpoint.
Okay. The no added maintenance does seem key to that as well. Ian, you had, so I'll open up for public comment as well. Ian, what do you got?
Just quickly, I would urge you to be cautious about system development charges. While they come in, they are also allocated in the initial process. So that would be one thing that Rob and company would have to deal with along the line. I like the creativity, but I didn't wanna, it's not a magic bullet, let's just leave it at that. That was my intent.
Absolutely.
All right. We have a draft motion here that if somebody is interested in making a motion, I will provide to them. I can't make a motion.
Before that-
I can't make a motion as the chair, so.
I just have one question, but like
Yeah.
the decision, or is there anything as far as the two options, is that a consideration here? Are we deciding on that, or is it just the material?
I've come for your advice on these two specific items, but you can give me advice on anything you want.
We can modify the motion.
I guess it's not advice, but I mean, I guess I just wonder if that is cost, because we don't have an estimate for that, which is concerning to make a recommendation on that. We don't even know what it's gonna cost, but we know it's gonna be more. Whether the difference of because what I heard was it feels more natural, like like a naturally feel. Can we justify that price difference for that benefit?
Well, and so I like that line of questioning, and one of my questions about the infield, right, is your classic typical baseball infield is dirt, right? And so we're talking about covering that dirt area with turf, right? And so I assume that would be a uniform turf, the same throughout. And so the ball is gonna play different.
I guess it's just because it's an improvement. Turf is a luxury, to be able to play on.
Yeah.
So I just, any turf is probably gonna be better than we have, and that's what I mean, is it that important? Honestly, like, I grew up playing in, dirt fields and stuff for soccer, and just playing in anything that's flat is nice. So.
You're asking us to be cognizant of, is the cost benefit there?
Yeah.
Is that's what I'm hearing. Yeah, and I hear you. We don't have the cost yet. I do know that this baseball specific product is being used on virtually every public field being done in the state. But I don't have all the answers for you today, because we're still going through it. It's like all the high schools that are having it put on, and the Portland metro area, they're all using that product. Interesting enough, the use of organic infills is not particularly common in Oregon. Not to say it's not common in general, it's just not common in Oregon. But the use of the baseball specific product is pretty consistent. So I'm thinking what we're gonna see is it's just a nominal price increase, but if it's $1.50 more a square foot, then we're gonna have a hard look at that.
Yeah.
So Rob, this maybe gets a little bit at the broader bond use funding strategies and projects, but my question is, okay, what is the intended use of these baseball fields at your park? So you talk about high school baseball fields, and right, they're playing in tournaments, they've got a system. I guess I don't know how these particular fields have been used at Gear Park, or will they be used in the future, and versus our parks at Wallace Marine, right, that are set up for tournaments. Are we expecting kind of competitive play? Are we expecting this to be more of a pickup game sort of location? Like what's the utility? What is the expected use of these fields?
From talking to our rec staff, the anticipated use is that we'll accommodate the current users, which are largely like the youth user groups. Then we will have the added benefit of when there's a giant tournament at Wallace, we can potentially program some of the games out here at your overflow events.
And so I think that's great, because that expands our capacity, to your point of STCs, right? Expanding the capacity within the park system. And I think it does get a little bit, Mauricio, at the cost, right? Because if you're bidding on those, being able to say that we have these turf fields that are specifically designed in a way for baseball or softball or whatever the case may be, I think could be an added selling point to the bidding process of those tournaments versus just generic turf that it might play different.
It's
Potentially. I know that's my best argument I got right now.
it certainly impacts on the revenue side, because one, you have longer duration of play for the season than
Yeah.
if you're shouldering on each,
Yeah.
and then two, the actual rate for use per hour per game, however
Yeah.
we constructed that, would be different on something that has an artificial turf versus just a natural turf. So there's a couple of mechanisms as well for some
Yeah.
additional funding to the city, Parks and Rec, to the city for
Yeah.
putting that type of material on.
Good.
Other questions or thoughts? Mauricio, go for it.
I move that board advise staff to proceed with the following specifications for the baseball infield surfacing at Gear Park as part of the 2022 safety and livability bond funded upgrades. Use an organic infill system such as olive core that excludes rubber and provides heat reduction without additional maintenance requirements. 2, ensure that any artificial turf system specified for the baseball fields contains a low level of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances or PFAS. These recommendations are made to enhance the environmental safety standards of the artificial turf installation while maximizing field usability.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Al. All right, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on that motion?
Yes, please. Can I say it?
Sorry. Somebody would say, could you repeat that?
A couple more.
So the motion says that we are asking the city staff to do what they can to minimize the use of PFAS in this project and to consider the use of organic fill materials.
I would just simply add, consider use of an organic fill system and when they develop the specifications. The way it's written here, they would only consider the organic system. If we say we consider an organic system, then that would still leave some leeway to go either way. You said it just now.
I did. What
But
can I
that
see
would-
what it says? Can you pass it back this way? Here's- You got another copy?
This only allows use of organic fill system. Whereas if we put the word consider use of, you give more flexibility. As additional information comes to light, and it's still gonna come down to a decision by the managers in the city, which would be the most effective way to go.
Yep.
And that would be my only addition.
What if we say encourage?
That would be fine too, because basically the way it's written now, there's no option.
There's no flexibility there.
And of course,
I guess I see us as
I
an
would
advisory
assume it-
board. There's
I would
always
assume it-
flexibility on the city staff. We don't actually have the authority to tell them to do much, but but I appreciate your point, Alan. So let's say if we can friendly amendment Al and Mauricio to say encourage the use in point 1. Any objections from the original motion makers? Al?
It's my intention to consider any organic option without PFAS in consideration of minimizing PFAS. I don't think that it's, I don't want to consider the rubber clump option. Any organic option is great. This can possible, whatever we can afford. But I don't think we should consider the rubber clump.
well, is there no other material available other than chewed up rubber and organic? Is there any other?
There's lots of products.
That's what I thought. If we leave the encourage, then that give you some more
Yes.
good room to research.
Yes.
There may be a acceptable product that's not pre-consumer rubber that would be just as well, that may not be organic.
Letting Al
You
consider,
mentioned
I'm
that.
letting Al consider that argument.
I trust Rob's statement when he says they will work to minimize PFAS content in the material. And that's good enough for me, if they will just work to minimize that, whether it be organic or otherwise. But I think the organic fill is the safe way to go. And if we can find an affordable option there, I much prefer that. Whatever option they can get organically without PFAS.
I'm hearing that as you're good with encourage.
Okay.
You're encouraging to use the word encourage.
Well, I feel like that's what because you had some leeway in there of various options, but Mauricio, your thoughts on that language change?
I'll second that.
Cool,
The
all right.
amendment there. Yeah.
I don't remember the exact order of events, but somewhere in a friendly amendment, the
Yes.
seconder and the original maker have to accept It's already been seconded, so it's owned by the board. I don't remember exactly. We probably need to formally agree to it, but we're small enough here to go more or less on consensus anyway. Any further discussion on the motion? So the motion is saying that we will encourage them or that they will be encouraged to use an organic infill system such as olive core, excluding rubber. Something that reduces heat without adding maintenance responsibilities, and that we will encourage or that we will ensure that the artificial turf system contains low levels of PFAS chemicals. That is the motion on the floor.
Number two, I think, was a given to start with.
So I'll second it.
All right. All in favor, say, sorry, Al, go ahead.
You're saying that we are encouraging them to encourage low levels of PFAS. I think that we don't want low levels of PFAS. I think we want the lowest possible or no PFAS. I don't want low levels. So if it could be stated so that minimizing or eliminating, that's the goal, I think. It's wordsmithing a little bit, but it's getting down to the point that we want to minimize the bad stuff, not just have a low level of it. We want to eliminate if possible. So I don't know if it's being picky to say that we want low levels of it. Actually, we want no levels of it. So, to say that we're going to have low levels of it sounds like we want to add some little bit to it if it doesn't have any. And that's what
Understood. So here are the terminology changes that I see being made. So number one is encourage the use of an organic infill system such as olive core that excludes rubber and provides heat reduction without additional maintenance requirements. Number two, ensure that any artificial turf system specified for the baseball fields minimizes PFAS chemicals.
Content.
Thank you.
there you go. That works.
Okay. No objections to that amended motion that I made, kind of, sort of. All those in favor of the motion as restated, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Motion passes unanimously. I was an aye as well.
Got there.
Thank you. Did you get those edits?
I did.
Excellent, thank you. Oh, thanks for the pen. That's the problem with this. I don't have a real pen. It's a-
I'll leave it there if you need it again.
All right.
Still have another one.
We are moving on to item C, McKay Park Bond Project Implementation Timeline. This is one for Rob as well. Take it away, please, Rob.
We are currently moving very, very quickly because we just actually recently kicked off this project, but to design an improvement project at McKay Park. Again, this is a bond funded project. The project at McKay has three elements. It is a renovation of the two existing soccer fields. It is, well, arguably there's four elements, so let me stop right there. So it is the renovation of the two soccer fields. It is the development of a reservable picnic shelter. It is a permanent restroom situation for the park. I'll come back with more details about that in the future. And it is the removal or the demolition of the old playground area. If you've been to McKay Park, you'll know that there is an unsightly facility remaining from the old playground. And so that could be removed and that area could be refreshed. Possibly we could locate the picnic shelter there. We're exploring that right now. We're not as far along in the design process on that project. However, both the gear project I just presented and the McKay project are scheduled to go to construction this coming year in the 2025 to begin construction. And in talking with our recreation staff, so it's kind of like engineering world. We used to great, we'll get these fields done all at once. There'll be, we'll design them together. There'll be some efficiencies in that. We talked to our rec staff and they said, hey, wait a minute. You're gonna take all four of the soccer fields down at once? That's not gonna work for our users. And so I'm preparing to bring that issue to the bond steering committee and ask them to agree to a delay in the McKay project of 1 year. That will increase the project costs because the way things are going, every day things cost more. So it's not a decision we're gonna make lightly, but we do think it's in the best interest of our users. Allows us more time to coordinate with McKay High School, who uses these soccer fields as if they were their home fields. And so I'm asking the board to advise staff and the bond committee for essentially to endorse this idea that we delay the project by a year.
I have a couple questions, and I'm just particularly interested in this because I play soccer at both these parks. And so, you know, Gear Park, I don't know what the extent of how long that's gonna be down for. Right,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, that comes into play here pretty importantly.
We're thinking that project's gonna start construction pretty early in as soon as we can in the spring.
Uh-huh.
But we don't have an exact date yet because we wanna make sure we're having some use in the spring, that we're not totally telling people there's nothing happening. But at some point, you know, I don't know, probably May at the latest, we will begin. And we're hoping that we'll have a regrowing, like growing in of the new seed, like by September. So it could really have a decent chance by September 1st.
So it'll be down all summer.
So there's a decent chance to have a good grow in so that it would be available that next year.
And I don't know what the cost difference is by reserving those fields. Does it get reserved?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And what that is compared to McKay Park, or if it's just the same?
It's a thing.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm in favor of, delaying this.
You don't want all 4 fields out at the same time?
Our intention would be, if we go this move, is that we're gonna have the gear fields open up right as the McKay fields go down. So there will be no point where all 4 are
I just know
closed.
there's gonna be high demand there.
Yeah.
This sounds like a reasonable, you know, approach to it. I would comment that, the old playground, there was a drainage problem there, so when you start reconfiguring, you may have to deal with some. But not only they called it a playground only in name only, because I was involved with the Park Foundation's, the new funding, but in putting that playground in, but there's some drainage issues that the site was. I mean, it's only reasonable to have something available, and then if you could, hopefully it won't be that much of a cost increase to delay it and wind up with a better product.
The drainage issues at McKay have been a source of significant discussion with the design team.
Good institutional knowledge there, Alan. Yeah. All right, I will entertain a motion. It looks like Joan is ready to make.
I move that the board advise the bond steering committee and staff to consider postponing the start of construction for the McKay Park bond project to 2026. This delay aims to minimize construction-related disruptions by avoiding the simultaneous closure of all 4 soccer fields at Gear Park and McKay Park.
I second that.
Seconded by Mauricio. Any further discussion on this particular proposal?
Sounds good.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I'm an aye, so motion passes unanimously. Rob, in terms of conveying that to the bond steering committee, is this sufficient for you to be able to do that? Do you need a letter?
That is sufficient. I will email the staff who chairs that today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We are cruising right along. That almost got us back on schedule, I think. To item D, which is a 2024 Sprab Park tour. So in our annual work plan, we have a goal of taking a park tour as a board. And we have been talking with staff about getting that scheduled at some point in the near future. And we are opening that up for thoughts and discussion from all of you on what you would like to see or get out of that tour. And so what is it we want to get out of it, right? I think, and from my kind of initial 2 cents, since I have the floor that I gave myself. My thought is there's a lot of these bond projects that are either have started or are getting started. And so I kind of see this as a good opportunity for us to go out and see and kind of talk and face to face with some of these projects that are underway. So that's potentially one idea that we have, but I'll open it up for discussion to say, if anybody has thoughts on where they'd like to go, which park, if there's a particular topical area that we want to try to focus on, then we can talk with staff about which park might be good to go to talk about that topic. But it's really just a way for us to kind of get out and make sure we're seeing how things work on the ground. Any initial thoughts?
I think my initial thought is, I think, yeah, there's a benefit to reviewing like this bond projects that are happening or about to happen. But at the same time, I think we need to look forward to other potential opportunities to invest in the parks. So making sure that we don't not use that time to, look at those maybe parks that are in need of some attention or eyes on it. So I think that I would like to prioritize. I don't know how to, designate which ones to consider, but just don't lose sight of that.
I think that's a good point. So are you thinking undeveloped parks or underdeveloped parks?
Or in parks and Nestor, I mean, we had a fence painted at one of the parks that, had,
Yep.
That maybe, we weren't aware of.
Yep.
So just things like that, it'd be nice to see. And just for me personally, not being familiar with all of them.
Okay, I think
And
that's a
then
good
there's
thought.
the
John?
mural at Northgate.
I was gonna say there's McCray, there's Northgate, there's Lansing, they're all kind of
So maybe,
graffiti related kinds of improvements.
well, and
that
thinking
are-
about the fence painting, right? Some of these maybe touring the parks that have had a lot of this neighborhood engagement.
I think there's it also just, we always hear about northeast, Salem, and just making sure that that's on our radar.
Okay,
So maybe Royal Oaks could be a topic as well, stop potentially.
other thoughts or ideas on things you'd like to see in a board parks tour?
I can say some here. It's almost every day that I'm in one park or another, somewhere around Salem, just for personal experiences and things to do. But so I've seen them, but I want to know what the staff wants us to see, so we can give appropriate attention to whatever it is they'd like. I would like to see more what the project is like at Woodmansee. I haven't been able to get down there. The Woodmansee rebuild on their court would be an interesting thing to see. And that same thing is going to be going on, or is going on, at River Road Park next to Kaiser. The rebuild on those courts as well. But whatever it is that the staff thinks we should see, whether it be parks that are yet to be developed and need more attention, or whether it be, well, look at it now and just wait till you see it in 2 years. I'd be glad to take part in seeing those things. Thank you.
Yeah, I have thought of Woodmansee just because it's gonna be a lot of nature stuff in there. So is that correct? Do I remember that correctly? Yeah.
Sounds good.
Trees. Birds probably use them.
What?
So there's trees, birds are probably.
There are trees. There's a disc golf course and sounds good.
Other thoughts, ideas? I will also caveat and say obviously, we're not gonna hit all of these thoughts or ideas, but this is guidance for me to work with the staff and kind of determining what this is. I'll also say that Dylan will be involved, and I'm certain Dylan has thoughts about this as well. So we'll he unfortunately couldn't be here today due to some work obligations, but we'll chat with him as well to make sure his thoughts get incorporated on where we could go. I like the ideas. Coming up, I know we also have the capital improvement project as well, and so that's similar to some bond projects, but maybe thinking ahead of like, where are those capital improvements gonna be, and being able to take a look at that priority list and tour around. And so I think what I'm kind of hearing is not necessarily, other than maybe the Woodmansee idea, not necessarily a single park stop, but maybe a bit of roving tour. Which adds a whole lot of logistical complexity, but that's fine. We'll figure it out. That's, it shouldn't be that hard. We're not that big of a group to get around,
We
so.
have a van that we
Do you?
used in
Okay.
previous parks
Okay,
tours. I think the other thing just too that would be helpful is we're kind of looking at the scope of how many parks and we're, you know, the different areas.
Yep.
It's like what kind of time frame you're looking at, you know, so in the past in parks tour, sometimes it's been like 4 hours, sometimes it's been, so, you know, we, I guess, need some,
Yeah.
some timeframes so that we could know, you know, what all we're trying to fit into a certain period of time.
And I think our assumption currently is 2.5 hours or so.
So, yeah.
But if you're up for more, let us know.
Does anybody have any immediate thoughts on that? I don't know that I do personally, and it probably depends on the day that we select, which
Yeah.
is also kind of a general topic. I think we put in the agenda that we're generally looking at early-ish October. Does anybody have any immediate reactions to that general timeframe or length of time for our tour engagement? Okay, and we'll try to follow up with more maybe specific guidance on how to select a day and time based on kind of first when city staff see is available for their various things, but then also where the majority of the board could be available for such a tour.
You said early-ish October. It scares me a little bit. I'm going to be out of town from the 4th to 11th.
Excellent. That is exactly opposite of me, Alan, where I will be out of town like the 9th through the 13th or something. So, so there goes early October. But we'll figure it out.
Do what we can with who we got.
Yep. All right, look for more information in your email from the city staff about kind of getting that scheduled and locked in over the next month. The next item is National Walk to a Park Day planning. And this is something that we have Dylan's name on there, even though we knew he wouldn't be able to attend the meeting today. Because this is something that he's been really passionate about. And last year we had kind of our first time marking that event. This year it is October 10th, right?
Yes.
It's always October 10th.
Yeah.
Which is the day of our meeting, which is fun, I guess. And so I think what we're looking for here is if there's anybody that would like to work with staff and Dylan and kind of planning something that we might be able to do in a way to acknowledge this event with the city. And I'm gonna look to Rob to see if he has any other thoughts on this at this stage in time, or
I'll just real quick that Chair McDowell definitely has some ideas. I also have some ideas that it could be not an event per se as a just a promotional opportunity to do some, social media to highlight the city parks and the opportunity to not necessarily have an event, but encourage people to visit their local park.
Yep.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be an event.
any immediate thoughts or questions about this? 1 second, Ian, giving the board a chance. Not seeing anything immediately, so we'll open up for public comment. Ian.
Just a quick question. I remember all the advertising from last year. I don't know the results. And I would encourage the board to think about how those two pieces put together, given what you've just said.
Yeah, good thought in terms of last year. I know it was a decent event with a school walk to a park. We got together with the school. Dylan was the chair at that time. And he attended, the mayor and a counselor attended.
And we made arrangements with the local elementary school and had 2 classes join the mayor, several city councilors, and a few, Rick, remember Hartwig was attended, just trying to remember.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a great event.
And so that was kind of the event that was hosted last year, that Dylan really helped pull together. we could do something similar. So it wasn't necessarily a big citywide event. There was some promotional efforts, in terms of citywide, but in terms of the event, it was, kind of focused on that elementary school, engagement. So there's potential options there. Is anybody immediately like, yeah, this sounds awesome. I want to work on this over the next 4 weeks?
I would be glad to help. I'm not too sure which way we're going.
Me neither.
I'd like most any way we go.
Right.
If it involves the park.
You sound perfect. for it.
The Parks Foundation has a walk in the park in the spring.
Yep.
But it's a single park and it's more to encourage family involvement in the Riverfront Park. But anything we can do would be, I think, in creating awareness of our parks. It's amazing. A lot of people do know, but we have a lot of people that move into Salem in the last couple of years. And some of our outreach to the Parks Foundation, it's an amazing number of people that they have no idea until we give them the map the city provides of where the city parks are. They may know one park or two, but they have no idea of some of the other ones are. So anything that increases awareness, increases utilization, which means increases support, particularly in view of some things that maybe in the future.
And I think you were heading right with the last comment I was gonna make on it, Alan, is I do think this is the type of event. And I really like having you involved because of your Parks Foundation connections and engagement as well. And thinking about how this type of event and promotion can help make people aware of our parks, more appreciative of our parks and what they bring to their community and to their livelihoods in the city, which becomes important when we start thinking about how are these things funded into the future. The timing of this particular event doesn't fit real well with that particular need, but I think seeing what we can do here to help kind of build that awareness and appreciation for our parks in the city is really good. So thank you for volunteering, Alan. I will make sure we get you lined up with Dylan when Dylan makes it back from his work trip here and can work with city staff to think about how best to promote this particular event. This is a national day, right? So it's a national event. And so I think it's a good opportunity for us to make sure we're taking time to promote our parks and do that. So looking forward to that. Next up, we have board member updates. Back to my notes to see what it is that I planned on talking about during this one. That is board member updates. We have our ongoing, I want to remind you of your ongoing research committee assignments. So those are coming up. I believe based on our kind of timeline, our tentative look at the October meeting agenda, we are not gonna have time to review the research committee assignments. That I believe, I don't remember which committee it was that was slated for October. But essentially this is a notice that whatever committee that was, and I think it might have been yours, Joan, but I could be wrong, is getting a bit of a reprieve and some extra time to go to November. For a meeting agenda then. So hopefully that is welcome news to the committees, but we'll look to kind of tee those up in November. Does anybody have any questions about those committee assignments or where you're at with them right now?
I just, last time, Deb and I met, we were hoping to get staff input on what we're working on. I just wanna make sure if we reach out that's.
We sent that. Maybe it didn't come to you, but it was sent to Joan and Debbie. So we did that after the meeting, but I can make sure it gets forwarded to you as well. You were talking about the equipment and what we've done and everything. Yep,
I'd like to
we
meet,
sent it.
I'd like to meet with some park people, I guess.
Yeah, we have.
To have a chat.
You can always email Leanne and I, and we can connect you.
Okay.
Any other items for board member updates?
Just thank you, certainly on a part of the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association for a bunch of stuff, but the realignment, reopening of the Skyline Trail. It's been a long time coming. I know it was thorny at best, but it cut down on, it comes up frequently in our neighborhood association when it's going to be finished. So I'm just elated that it's done and it's complete. So thanks so much for pushing that on through. I know it wasn't easy, it wasn't short, but a very, very complex project. And I also wanted to add, I've already shared with Jennifer, Sunny Slope does a back to school night at all the schools in our neighborhoods. And we have an information table, distribute information about the city, phone numbers, share parks information. That's sort of my purview. And the last one we did, we were down at Liberty. And I usually ask when the adults come up and sign up and do all their stuff. The kids, I ask them, I said, do you have a favorite park that you go to? And it's these two little girls, I've never seen them. They said, Sunny Slope Park, and they've got a Gaga pit now. And it's just recently been installed.
Yeah.
And I mean, just spontaneously, and you couldn't ask for a greater, sensation for when two little girls tell you that you've done something and put in their park, and they're so excited about it. And I wish the rest of the life could be like that. But anyway, so thank you so much for getting that done and getting it done very timely.
That's a great update. Thank you, Alan. I remember discussing that Gaga pit and I still don't think I know what it is, but glad people are appreciating it.
I didn't either know what the park
We
is
had to walk him through it, yeah.
We have one here in the back.
Do you? Okay, I might go check it out.
Portable.
Any other board member updates? Al?
I would like to hear something, I don't know if it's gonna be coming from mine or who, but on the Emerald Ash borer traps, and have they been examined, analyzed? What's the status of the Emerald Ash borer infestation that's coming down from the north that we've heard about? If that could happen. I also would acknowledge some work that took place after I met Mike at Brush College Park, the ranger. I mentioned that some people had removed picnic tables from the park and relocated them into the undeveloped woods adjacent to the park. One of them, in fact, was relocated into the stream. Certainly people wanted to cool their heels while they're picnicking. But at any rate, Mike took care of seeing that the table got moved back into the park, so it's available now for people. Though there is still one in the stream, I think that it's harder to get out. I want to ask Rob about the future of pedestrian access for Straub Nature Park. This is a city park that's 2 blocks from Straub Middle School and 3 blocks from Calapooya Elementary School, but has no pedestrian access. There is car access off of Doak Ferry Road, and it's about 1 block walk from pedestrian sidewalk down Doak Ferry Road to the park, but it's not a really safe pedestrian walk alongside that highway. No sidewalk, striping only part of the way. So what is the plan, or is there a plan? Is there a proposal for some kind of pedestrian access to Straub Nature Park? I know that somebody cut a hole in a chain link fence adjacent to the school or on the side of the school, and people can access it that way, but it's not a legitimate official access. So I'm just curious about the future of that pedestrian access to the park. Those are my issues or concerns at this point. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Al. Rob?
So yeah, some quick responses there. Our city Emerald Ash borer monitoring program has not detected the presence of the pest in the city yet. However, it's certainly been documented in Marion County, which is extremely concerning. And the division report does have an update about that specifically in our efforts in response to its detection here in Marion County and what we're doing. Going over to Straub Nature Park, I anticipate that we will explore this topic with the Park System Master Plan update, which I will be updating you about next meeting. I do anticipate that there'll be potentially an opportunity for a policy about improving connections to parks. Not just that location, there are many other parks in the city where there's definitely a need for an access improvement. And so I think that's to come in terms of long range planning. In terms of short range planning, there are no plans to do an access improvement at that park. It's not a part of the CIP today. And we don't necessarily have a funding source to program a project, unfortunately. There are lots of these opportunities across the city. I think the first step is to identify them so we can get a sense of what it's gonna take to get them all completed.
Al, I think that's it's a good question. I think it relates a little bit to, I'm gonna make it relate a little bit to Mauricio's comment earlier about, visiting parks that have these opportunities and they're maybe underdeveloped or undeveloped. And I think that is something, to Rob's point, of kind of, making sure that we're aware and have a record of kind of these, opportunities within the park system. And knowing where those opportunities are, so we know if and when the funding source becomes available, how we can jump on it. Cause I think that there are also a number of parks that just have nothing in them, have no development despite master plans having been formed for years. And so where's the attention to kind of get those developed? Where are these kind of loose ends, I'll say, on parks that are where the park has been completed, but it's not necessarily connected into the city in the most useful way, right? So kind of understand where those loose ends are on a number of projects, I think would be helpful. So glad you could bring it up.
Okay.
No other board member updates? All right, information reports. Those were written from the Parks and Rec division. Any questions or comments on those informational reports?
The damage report didn't make it in the packet. We'll have that next month.
Good note. I believe there was also in this report a timeline of projects and kind of their completion dates that I thought was really interesting and useful. Let's take a look at that if you haven't already. Item number 7, new business. Any new business items people would like to bring up? I will reiterate here one of the new business items from our public comment from Jim Shepke today that I think we will want to talk about at some point in the near future, perhaps at our October meeting, is the city council's consideration of a potential levy and revenue options, and what that could or should or might mean for our park system, and how we as a board feel about that and what our thoughts are on it. And so that's something I think it'd be great for you all to take a look at, kind of where the city council is and those deliberations and discussions of the revenue task force options and other revenue options they're considering. And that's something that perhaps we can discuss in greater detail about how this is an opportunity for us to be involved for the benefit of the city's park system.
I just thinking out loud here, not necessarily an action, I'm just throwing it out there. I was fascinated by the floodplain and the natural habitat preservation efforts, and then the emerald ash borer issue, because I know that the native ash trees are very, prevalent in riparian areas and at various, so it's just really concerned about that, and I think it's inevitable that that's going to be here, and we can treat as much as we can, but that just delays and prolongs. So I think that's important, but what are we gonna do as far as replanting, replacing, or something to make sure we don't just lose that habitat from those trees that we're inevitably potentially lose?
We should schedule on the agenda, actually have Mylan come
Yep.
specifically to talk about that.
That's a good
Both
thought, Marcia.
what's
Yeah, so it's,
transpired. They're going to a conference. We have a staff person who's going to a conference specifically on emerald ash borer. Here it's just now coming up, but then also about for the future too. So kind of what we've done, where we're at, and what we're planning for the future, but have not just a written report, but make sure it's like an agenda item for him to come and be able to address questions or.
And because I think the concern is primarily the Oregon ash in our riparian areas, we should invite Public Works staff to resource planning as well.
Yeah.
So we'll have two work groups here
Yeah.
to talk about that.
cause you're right, that's there's no stopping it. It's here, it's gonna be here.
Slow it down.
A little bit of slowing it down, but really how do you mitigate the impacts of it? How do you recover from it? And move
By the time
forward?
you see it visibly, it's
Too late.
like.
And fortunately, I guess is a way to say it, right? That we're not the first state or area to encounter emerald ash borer, right? So there's a lot of lessons learned from across the country where this has been already.
I just see it as an opportunity to, you know, minimize the impact.
Yeah.
Of how we recover from that, so.
Yeah. That's a great thought. So thank you for considering that for future agenda item. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, with that, I will call our meeting adjourned. Thanks for a great discussion today. Thanks for each of you for showing up to make sure we had a quorum to get through these important topics. Have a
Move
good
to
rest of your
adjourn.
day.